there's like a developer log in regards to the armor updates. I'm not too sure what I should expect. So I'm gonna watch it with you and break it down together so we could learn some stuff and advance further. Okay, this is gonna be a lengthy
I want
one.
to jump into a little bit of a deep dive into the armor systems within Diablo 4. So, Mom, take us through it.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about the armor system. So in Diablo 4, armor is the major way for player to mitigate incoming damage, especially physical damage.
Okay.
The major way for people to acquire armor is through the 5 armor slots. There are helm, chest, pants, boots, and gloves.
Helm, chest, pants, gloves.
And mostly for fantasy reason, we made armor, chest armor, and pants provide the most armor value. While boots and gloves provide the smallest amount of armor value.
Okay.
Armor, the armor value on an item is depends on the item's power. And in Diablo, we use the item power value to represent the power of the item.
So this is usual so far.
Yeah,
And-
I don't think we've talked a lot about how item power works. Can you describe what
Please.
it means for Diablo 4?
Yeah, so in Diablo 4, the item when they start dropping, it's based on the monster's power, and we need a value to represent how powerful this is. Like when you start getting more challenging content in the later world tier, you'll see you'll get more and more powerful item, and we need something to evaluate that, then represent that power. So we use the item power to represent that.
Okay, okay.
And you can see that on the items tooltip.
So thus far, I think this is widely acceptable, and this is not anything new. This is widely used in World of Warcraft and Diablo 3. He is speaking, if I understand correctly, about item level and representation of combination of prefixes and suffixes on the item is reflected on the item level. So good, it's very good to have this kind of material, and you don't need to look into each and every specific stat, so we could understand is this the good thing, is this better, or is this a worse thing?
And if you like, you can compare the two items. If the one item has a higher item power, that means
Exactly.
that item most likely gonna be more powerful than the lower item.
Most likely.
But not always, right?
Not
There
always.
might be
Yeah.
specific affixes or
Okay.
things that are especially powerful for your build.
Yeah, exactly. And back to the armor value. The armor value actually directly tied to this item power on those armor items. It's actually scaling linearly with those item power. The higher the item power, the more armor value that item provides.
And that's so that we know that we have some baseline for how much damage mitigation the player has.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because of this, when you loot higher power items, you naturally gain higher amount of armor. And therefore,
Okay.
it's guaranteed you always have a certain amount of damage mitigation against physical damage.
Oh, okay, but it's only physical. So let's just hear if what happens in regards to the magical damage as well. I say here, certain monsters will be reflecting and dropping certain item level items. Now, question is, will you be able to distinguish what kind of zone in stronghold? If you don't know about strongholds, you can click the video right there, I think on the top, explaining the strongholds. So it really depends on the stronghold description, if it has one, if we can distinguish, if we know the item level or drops of item levels at all. And I hope this is gonna be possible. Well, I hope, but in truth, I hope that there's gonna be a hidden secret element in the game that we would need to discover. Let's continue on.
And so, so armor works differently in Diablo 4 than it did in Diablo 3, right?
Yeah.
In particular for elemental resistances.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like in Diablo 4, So this is kind of like a long story. Like we because of the mechanic, we made sure the item, the player have a certain amount of damage mitigation against the physical damage. But then we found out some monster they are doing non-physical damage, and that caused trouble for the player. Like for example, there's a dungeon boss only deal shadow damage.
Okay.
That caused some serious balance problem for the encounter team, because for people who have a reasonable amount of shadow resistance, that boss is not that hard. But some people, like when they have 0 shadow resistance, the boss is almost unbeatable. Like they.
All right. So I hear that we are speaking about different elemental resistances. I hope this is going to be a very close resemblance to Diablo 2. I just hope so. I'm not too sure. So far, the discussion has been very straightforward and narrow. It's hard to follow for me. Hopefully, I'm the only one getting this vibes incorrectly. If I'm wrong or I'm correct, leave a note down below. Leave a comment. That means a lot. Thanks.
We will always get one shot for this boss.
And players at low level, they might not have access to as much shadow resistance. They might not be as familiar with the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to solve this problem, what we did is we made some changes to the armor system. So armor not only absorb or mitigate incoming physical damage.
Yes.
We also make it absorb a certain amount of non-physical damage. So how it works is like this. For whatever percentage the armor absorbs physical damage, it also absorbs half of that amount of non-physical damage. For example, your armor absorbs 60% physical damage. So your armor will also absorb 30% of all the non-physical damage.
So it means that there's no additional need for jewels, as your armor will be cross-functional for magical and physical damage. But that's, for me, it's strange that such things are separated, and I can't really stay away from the cosmetics that's been thrown at our face. It's gorgeous. It's very good to have those look presented in our screens, right?
So fire damage, shadow damage, and so on.
Exactly. And because of this, people now also gain some amount of, not a big amount, but some amount of mitigation against non-physical damage. So that shadow boss is still challenging for people with 0 shadow resistance, but it's in a much more controllable way.
And as players level up and they get access to higher world tiers, those world tiers actually have
World tiers. I believe this is sets.
a penalty to your elemental resistances, right? So you're going to have to really make sure that you're keeping up on those resistances.
Yeah, exactly. When you get to a higher world tier, we added more penalty for the player to make the higher world tier more challenging. And so you will have a...
So it's not the sets, it's just a tier. So basically we have, like, example, gear set score of 100, and if you want to get gear score leveled up to 200, you need to have all of the items meeting that threshold, so you could get over 200. Oh, so it may be that up until you reach certain item level threshold, your monsters will not drop good items, or you won't be able to access certain dungeons, certain strongholds.
We put some 20% penalty from World Tier 2 to World Tier 3 for the resistance. So you gain 20% less resistance. And from World Tier 3 to World Tier 4, we
Amazing skin.
put even higher penalty. It's 40%. So World Tier 4 will be a lot more challenging than World Tier 3.
But players have access, as they're getting up into those higher levels, they're also getting access to more sources of elemental resistance, right?
Yeah, exactly. We added the elemental resistance into various in-game system, skill tree, like item affixes.
Oh, that's cool.
Paragon system, you can acquire those resistance through more and more ways. We actually expose more and more ways for you to be able to acquire armor and resistance.
Oh, that's cool. So it just leaves us with full customizations, how fast and how satisfyingly we want to kill demons. And if it all boils down to the skill tree and items being just cosmetic, it opens a door to a lot of questions.
At the end game.
So I think you brought some charts to show, like in more detail, how.
Show us charts.
Sure.
Charts.
We have talked about like all the
Damage reductions from expected armor. Damage reduction. So we have level 100. That's amazing. Hell yeah. I was wondering what kind of max level we can have. It's 100.
all the basic of how armor works. I want to dive a little bit deeper into actually how armor affect players' gameplay experience
Please.
from level to level. The first thing I want to talk about is at each level we have a expected armor value for player, and based on that we calculate what's the damage reduction.
Oh, so basically, in order for you to kill monsters and be sufficient enough so that you could take some damage, the game expects you to have certain level of armor on yourself. So looking at lower levels, you have some starter level gear already equipped on your character, and you have damage mitigation. If you remove all of your armors, you will most likely quickly die. As level goes up, you need to have bigger item level so you could fight your level monsters. If you don't do that, you will die.
Player can get at each level, and we balance the monster damage above that.
Very smart.
This chart you can see at the beginning, based on the expected armor value, you can only get a little above 10% damage reduction.
Yeah.
But it goes up pretty fast, and at the late game you can get like over 40% damage reduction from the armor value. It makes sense fantasy wise because think about it. At the beginning you have only this light leather pants. It absorbs a very small amount of damage, but at a later level you get this epic plate armor that absorbs a lot more.
So basically, I think that the hardest part would be leveling from level 6 to level 29 or level 30. This is the hardest points, as you need to find sufficient armor so you can sustain yourself and kill monsters quickly enough that you can level up. I think after you get like 30% of damage reduction, you can start fully understanding your class and start prioritizing stuff. What kind of armors and weapons you should be focusing on, what kind of skill trees you need to be shaping towards. Either you need to be more protective or defensive. As up until you get to that 30% chart, I think you're just picking up and doing everything as you go along the journey.
Because of this, like the damage reduction going up, player also that means that we need to make the monster deal more and more damage to mitigate the damage reduction for the player.
Sure.
And this is next. I'm going to talk about how actually each unit armor absorb damage from level to level.
Yeah, because I think we have another graph here.
Show us another graph.
The
Yes.
armor.
So you
Damage.
see, like
On the top, damage reduction contribution per armor, and this is the damage reduction. At the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's 0.005, and then goes up to...
opposite to how much damage reduction we expect for player to get from level to level. It's from lower to higher, but actually the damage reduction per armor is going down with level.
So per point of armor that I have, this is the chart that shows how much damage reduction that one, a single point of armor gives me at a given level. Okay.
And at the beginning, like you can see from this chart, like every 100 armor can absorb about 5% of damage reduction. But it goes down pretty fast early and slow down at the end. And at the end, you can see it like each 100 armor can only absorb 1% damage.
I love it.
We make it
I think this kind of creates you, I hope it will create similar combinations as there exists in New World, where you equip like a robe, gloves, and then heavy helmet, and combination of armors in order for you, so you could have this damage mitigation and have enough damage control and then sustainability, so it would be a perfect balance. If that thing is gonna exist, it's gonna be awesome.
Work this way because we want to make sure that designer have room to add more armor bonus at the end game. We try to avoid the situation like at the beginning you get to a pretty good amount of armor, then you totally forgot about this stuff. Like early on, we talked about we added like a resistance penalty to for player from war tier to war tier. That's actually for a very similar purpose. Because of this penalty, even though you have a pretty good resistance at the early game, you still need to look for more resistance at the late game.
Okay.
And there are other ways that players can get damage reduction too, in addition to armor, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not only that they get this, that's kind of like happen at the late game when the challenger starts. They need to find
armor damage reduction.
Like, they can look for like for sorcerer class, they can look for energy shield. For druid and barbarian, they look for fortified power. And for rogue class, they look for more dodge chance. So not only they build on the armor and resistance to mitigate the damage, at the late game, because the challenge becomes so tough, the world becomes the monster is so.
With armor damage reduction, armor 2000. Okay, so damage reduction goes down as level goes up.
So harsh. They need to find multiple ways to be able to survive in this harsh world. So far, I have been talking about like all of this is one player fighting the equal level monster.
Yeah.
So next I'm gonna talk like what if you fight against a different level monster? If a monster higher than you or a monster lower than you.
Yeah.
So this chart shows a player with 2,000 armor. What happened? How much damage reduction it actually absorb for that 2,000 armor when they fight against different level monster? And you can see like the higher the monster level is, the less damage reduction.
Yeah.
2,000 armor actually absorb. And you can see like at a lower level, they actually already like reach the damage reduction cap we set for armor, which is 85%. But when you like for 2,000 armor, usually the player can acquire this amount of armor around the level 30.
Right.
But if you see this level 30 character when they fight a level 100 monster, the 2,000 armor can actually only absorb 5% of the incoming damage, which is pretty minimum. So that means when a player, for them to challenge a higher level monster, not only the monster deal more damage, they also penetrate more of your armor.
Yeah.
I'm going to need more armor as I level up.
Yeah, yep. During level up campaign, like while you're doing campaign, all you do the open world content, it's not a big issue because most of the monsters scale with you. But when you do the end game content like a Nightmare Dungeon or Helltide,
maybe we're gonna know when end game content begins.
a lot of time you are forced to fight higher level monster. And in those cases, you will take like this built-in punishment to for the player. So
Punishment system.
You need to like find a way to mitigate that the more damage. Some people like they build up their offensive power, they try to finish the combat faster so that they can take less damage. While other people, they find all the way, like we said, going through Paragon system, skill tree, item affixes, and legendary power, using all the ways to mitigate that harsh punishment.
Oh,
We
gameplay.
also added damage mitigation to monsters in Diablo 4, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to talk about. So we used to not have a damage mitigation for monsters. So monster used to not have armor. So however amount the damage player did,
Whoa.
that's however amount of damage the monster gonna take. So it has an advantage. It's pretty straightforward. It's really easy to understand. But it also has a problem, that is whenever we want to increase the monster's defense power,
Yeah.
the only way we can do it is through increasing the monster's hit point. Like we say, from level 31, a monster from level 31 to 32, we want to increase their defense power, the time to kill, by 10%.
Yeah.
That means level 32 monster gonna have 10% more hit point or life than the level 31 monster. If you do this from level 1 to level 100, and at the end it ends up with a super big number, like a billions or trillions. And for people, for player to be able to kill this monster in a reasonable time, the player needs to deal like billions of damage.
Yeah. And it's not cool,
And
not
in
fun.
Diablo 4, we show this damage number as a floating combat text. We cannot hide it. And so because the number is so big, so long, it covers a big chunk of the screen.
Yeah, it's hard to understand too. Like
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Combat in Diablo is really fast. You want to be able to quickly understand how much damage you're doing.
Yeah.
And we're trying to keep the numbers down.
I'm just thinking, what's the point in understanding how much damage you're doing, like realistically? Like in Diablo 2, you had the health bar of the enemy, and that's totally fine. Same thing, I think, in Black Desert Online. It's perfectly fine. I don't really understand the purpose of having the damage numbers.
Yeah. We try to solve this problem. Also, we get a lot of feedback from community.
Maybe it's simply just cool to see numbers. I don't know.
They also don't like this.
I know the community's talked a lot about like big damage numbers and so forth, and like Diablo 3, for instance, and so forth. So,
Yeah, what's the point of having those numbers?
So therefore, we decided to add this damage mitigation, or we call it monster armor. So at each level, monster actually absorb a certain percentage of player's damage. It's pretty low at the early level, and it goes up at a later level.
I think this is, well, again, Blizzard, they had a lot of time to make this happen. It's very clever.
Then in our playtest, it creates a different problem, because this damage reduction going up pretty fast. Player actually deal less damage when they level up. That's not what we want.
I don't want to get weak.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to take the damage reduction number for the monster, so that it always scales slower compared to the damage increase.
Wow.
Damage increase for the player. So it's player's damage deal to the monster still increase from level to level, but now we have a pretty good way to control how fast it increases. And therefore we get the damage number at a very late game into a pretty reasonable space.
That's good.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
Okay, I don't know. I think we covered this video fullest to its full extent. There's a lot of information thrown at our face. And yeah, so this was the armor review,